All right, here we go. So this is the fortnightly working group meeting for the real-time working group. A couple items on the agenda. So Sean's not here yet, so we'll skip his and yeah, go straight to the second announcement, which is that Heinrich and Matthias collaborated on an epic, the description of which serves as a kind of design document. Would you agree, Heinrich?
Yeah, kind of like history plus like what's the current state. At the end of probably at the end of this working group, we could get something like a real design doc into the documentation. But yeah,
Sure. Cool. Yeah, and I noticed that Matthias had some discussions around performance. Like he's opened quite a few issues uh, to do with memory usage and that kind of thing. And he's also had a conversation with Nate in the Ruby on Rails performance training channel on Slack, which I think is worth reading. But yeah, this epic will gather together some of the infrastructure stuff that we're doing as well, but the feature works in a different epic. So I've linked both of those from the working group page. Cool. So yeah, I'll kick off with the first item. So some of the plan team have expressed an interest in learning about Docker and getting involved in the Docker work. And I'm kind of wondering, maybe Ben would know, is there any training material, any kind of guidance, best practices, anything like that? Is there any prospect of, you know, having a DRI for this kind of thing that we can ask questions of? Anything like that? Don't know.
Yeah, I don't have any specific documentation that we can follow.
Cool. Yeah, so we were thinking about, so Heinrich, you were saying you would, and you have an item in the agenda for this, that you would do the omnibus changes in parallel, giving us the option basically of running this on existing nodes while we do the Docker work.
yeah, I was just thinking like because somebody's like owning the Docker and Kubernetes work anyway, so like this is the next step I could work on. So yeah, at least we have these two options available for us. Yeah, because we could even start with the omnibus for staging, right? If if we really want to get it early and omnibus is done, we could start with omnibus for just staging and wait for Kubernetes a bit later or something like that. But yeah.
Okay, so what's the status of the omnibus work there? Like what, I mean, by the looks of things, when we address training, and it's possible that the Docker work goes much faster than we expect, but given what we have to start with, it could take quite a while. So is the idea that we would start then with Omnibus and deploy that to app servers and do the thing that we said about application layer isolation, like using feature flags or something like that?
Yeah, it could be possible that we go that route, like deploy on the app nodes using Omnibus. Though, I'm not sure. Like maybe infra has the final say if you want to do that or not, or wait for Kubernetes, or maybe when we start working on Kubernetes, we can get a general idea of whether like it's gonna take longer or is it gonna be really quick or something like that.
From an infra perspective, I would prefer to concentrate on making sure that in production we deploy this with Kubernetes, because it's work we're going to have to do anyway. And spending time on omnibus stuff for production is like lost work.
Is there a difference between the omnibus work we have to do for GitLab.com to accommodate GitLab.com and that we would have to do anyway for self-hosted?
No, it's the same work. So
some of it's the same work. Some of it is, we would have to spin up and spend time working on infra to do it.
Yeah, the omnibus part would be the same work, but then there would be infra changes to configure omnibus for this specific role and specific service. So that's why I thought of like working on the omnibus thing also in parallel, because like we'd have to do this anyway if the goal of the working group is like get this to self-hosted.
Okay, cool. I don't want to jump around too much, but do we have anyone on the call who's acquainted with the CNG project, the basically our existing cloud native Docker images?
That's like the build delivery, like JSON Plum.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks. Gabe, you had an item?
Yeah, I was just reading through some of the memory issues that were spun out of this, and it looked like just so I understand the state of things, the high memory consumption just by running Action Cable was falsely reported. And I just wanted to verify that as of now, we're not planning on, I guess, preemptively implementing like artificial constraints on what we can use WebSockets for into the future. Just I want to make sure we're not like, the goal of implementing this is so it can be used across the whole product, and I want that to be like a stated goal up front, so that as we design this out, that we make sure that we are taking that into account. And we will have to understand memory constraints and stuff, but I just don't want to put like, so the assumption is not we're only going to use this for the sidebar. We're going to use this for, you know, real-time collaboration on merge request descriptions and issue descriptions and like everywhere across the product. And I just wanted to make sure that like that's known, so we don't think it's only just for like the issue sidebar. So
Yeah, I don't think there are currently any plans on putting limits on it. Although we've had like recent discussions with Matthias, because he was like limiting the WebSocket nodes can do, like limiting what classes we load or something, just to, you know, save memory. And but it's still very early in discussions, and I'm kind of leaning towards not doing that, because it's just really, with our Rails monolith, it's difficult to get like boundaries, and it's really hard to tell. I mean, you load an issue class, issue depends on, you know, issuable and all the other mentionable, and just, you know, really hard to define boundaries there. So I don't think that's gonna happen, because yeah, it's just so hard to split it out.
okay, cool, thanks.
I think some of the discussion there's already started about AnyCable Go. Again, if you check the Ruby on Rails performance training channel, that conversation with Nate, who worked on or authored the Puma server, you know, there's some discussion already about how we'll switch to AnyCable Go, and whether it, you know, the gRPC server uses HTTP2, which Puma doesn't support, I believe. So I'm kind of wondering, like, maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves. Like, we're definitely planning to start with Action Cable, right? And we'll do that like with appropriate observability and see if we have a problem before we try to move to AnyCable. That's the plan, right?
Yeah, that's still the plan. And Camille was also looking into other ways we could save memory, not by switching to it. Because with AnyCable, actually, it was kind of a false, call this false assumption that we're going to save memory because it's a Go process. I think it was forgotten by a lot of like people in the discussion that if we use AnyCable, we'd actually have to spin up a sibling process, a gRPC server, which puts the whole Rails app. So it's kind of the same thing. And so Camille was looking into other ways we could save memory, which is like starting a parent process and then forking another process for Puma and Puma Web and another process for Puma Action Cable, something like that. So we could take advantage of copy and write, and similar to what we do with Sidekick Cluster, I think. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm totally supportive of whatever approach we take. I just want to make sure we don't put like artificial limits on it out of the box. I think we do need to measure and get that observability in place and understand implications for scale, just so we can project out costs and things like that. Because I know .com profitability is increasingly important. So like we just basically need to understand the financial implications at scale as quickly as possible, but we can't do that until we get something small out. So, I'm all for that.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned that though. So it's kind of like clear that our plan is really to build a lot of things on top of this, and it's not meant to be like a limited, thing.
Correct.
When you say it was misreported, I saw something about the fact that we released a separate Puma server with GDK that we weren't reporting anything on it. But when you say it was misreported, I didn't see.
Yeah, I'll drop the issue in here.
Yeah, in the logs, they were like logging, like the regular Puma server was consuming 1 gig and the action cable was consuming 1.5 gig, like for no reason at all. And it's apparently like just the calculation problem or something, not sure. But if you actually look at the RSS and whatever low level numbers, and they're actually the same.
Okay, cool, thanks.
The other thing that I thought was interesting is this issue where it, I'll drop it in here. Matthias made this comment that, like, he said, I find it alarming that we have a sophisticated pipeline deployed for this and it didn't signal as change, that we didn't like detect the memory increase caused by action cable and CI. So it should be addressed and fits well into our proactive roadmap, which is good. So I guess we're trying to make sure that like we have some built-in checks for memory consumption in the build pipelines, or which I think is a good thing to have. But it is interesting that we didn't catch it. So
Yeah, but I think it was answered by Matthias later on. Like it was because action cable actually had very little like overhead requiring action cable gem. So yeah, that was fine. So
okay, cool.
Cool. We don't have any more items, but I'll jump back up to Sean since he did make it. So yeah, he wanted to update that Helm now supports multiple Redis instances. I guess this unblocks the Kubernetes work when we're ready to start on it completely.
yeah, I think it's a great thing to know, and yeah, it unblocks our Kubernetes work. And yeah, for now, until we find another blocker or something, but it depends.
Yeah. So I think I don't know if I copied in. Yeah, I copied in the issue. So Gabe, we might want to prioritize in the plan team that Puma Dockerization issue that I created, because I'm not sure there'll be work directly out of this one. We might have sub issues, but given that we'll have to identify the right people and resources like to actually help the team take on the Dockerization work, we should probably prioritize it.
Consider it prioritized. I mean, we can move it into the backlog or ready for development and queue it up as soon as the planning breakdown's done and we know who's going to work on it.
I'm having some trouble running those Docker images individually locally. Like I can run the whole thing using Docker Compose, but like there are a lot of open questions about this stuff, and maybe we could try to improve the documentation for other teams, like the Create team, who will be coming behind us to build even more stuff on WebSockets in the future. It might be useful information.
Yeah, I agree with that. Can we pair with somebody who knows a lot about it so that we don't? I mean, we can even spend lots of time like learning on our own and like going down and seeing what works and what doesn't, or we can pair with somebody who has a lot of the domain knowledge and then work with them to also improve the documentation as they transfer the knowledge onto our team. So that would be more efficient. And I'd recommend that if we can find somebody. If not, then we'll do it the more difficult way, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good takeaway, actually. Like after this, I'll try to find somebody. Ben mentioned Jason Plum there, so maybe he can help us find somebody on the team who can be even a DRI for simple questions to keep the thing unblocked.
Yep.
Cool. We don't have any
There's
more items. So.
There's other thing I I just want to mention that Action Cable is already running on GCK. Matthias did some work on that. So yeah, those use Docker also, but those are completely different images from the one in CNG. So yeah.
So I'm at the extent of my knowledge here. I think the CNG ones are the ones that are used for our pipelines. And then we have the Omnibus repo, right? So that must be the one that GCK is using.
No, GCK is a alternate setup for development that uses Docker containers. So it's not actually, these containers aren't actually like distributed to, for production use or anything, but it's mostly for development. So they're a completely different set of Docker files or images. But I think that's what they use mostly, Matthias and Camille and the others. So they got it working on GCK. So
cool.
Good.
I'll probably have a look through some of the MRs there and see what they did. Because I think, not to go into the weeds too much, but like we have to add the cable.yaml file to the existing Docker images, right?
Yeah, that's what they did. Yeah. I'll link to the MR if I can find it.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Okay, no more items. So that's it for today. I'll organize these every 2 weeks because every week feels like a bit much. Cool. If nobody else has any items to add, we can finish here. I'll take that as a no. Okay, thanks.
Great.